I'm very delighted to be back to present another coffee break discussion together with
Sue Wanwig.
I'm Tony Newell.
Let's have fun talking over a cup of coffee.
I once heard that in England they say an Englishman's house is his castle. And I suspect it's just an expression of our feelings of possession, privacy, and security.
Mm-hmm.
Another common remark recently made in reference to a Japanese house is rather an unpleasant one. That is, because a Japanese house in general is not quite as large as its Western counterpart, it is unfortunately compared to a rabbit hutch, which I think is really a journalistic description, but I have to admit that there is some truth in it as far as its size is concerned.
Well, I always hate to hear that because it's not fair to compare a Japanese house with its Western equivalent only in terms of its size or the space in it. I think we also have to think of other factors such as its structure, design, the function, the surrounding environment, the way the people live, the economical use of space, and even the economical use of the material at hand.
Yes, that's right, I agree. To begin with, the total structure of a house here in Japan seems to be rather different from the houses I'm used to living in the UK.
Okay, that's a very good starting point, Tony. And as our listeners will have guessed by now, our topic for today is houses. So let's see what a typical Western house is like in terms of its structure and possibly function.
Well, it's awfully hard to describe Western houses in general because there's so much variation. And I think especially when we think of the differences in style over the years, the houses that my grandparents lived in are very different from the ones built now.
Mm-hmm.
But a typical one-story house would have, of course, a front door in the front.
Mm-hmm.
And inside the front door, there's usually a kind of entrance hall with a coat closet. And near the front of the house is usually a living room.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes a dining room. Recently, family rooms have been quite popular. A family room is a kind of combination of dining room and informal living room with a TV set where the family spends most of its time together.
Excuse me, does it correspond to a Japanese chanoma or something like that? You know, people sit around the table and there is a TV set there and everybody can watch television. Of course, space-wise and furniture-wise, it may be a bit different. But, you know, as far as its function is concerned...
Yes, the same idea.
People get together. I mean, the members of the family get together there.
Right.
And enjoy talking or watching TV.
Like a living room, but much less formal.
Mm-hmm.
And then towards the back of the house will be the kitchen, and in a one-story house, sometimes called a ranch house, the bedrooms would be near the back.
Mm-hmm.
In a two-story house, for example, a colonial house,
Mm-hmm.
the bedrooms are likely to be upstairs, and also main bathroom would be upstairs.
Yes.
A lot of houses also have a large room underground or partly underground we call the basement.
Mm-hmm.
And we might have a washing machine there, or in some cases, yes, a furnace.
Mm-hmm.
In some cases, an extra bedroom or even a ping pong table. Depends on the space.
Or even an extra toilet.
Yes.
Mm. What about you, Tony? What, I wonder, are some of the common types of British houses and how they look?
Yes, well, there are, of course, various types, like bungalows, which are one-story houses.
Oh, bungalow, did you say? It's not a holiday house, is it?
Oh, no, it isn't, actually. In Britain, when we say bungalow, we're simply referring to the fact that the building has one story only, just one floor.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought it was cottage wood or something which is used during the vacation.
Oh, no, we find them in cities, too, I'm afraid. Yes.
But in America, we usually refer to a bungalow as being something in the country or at the seaside.
Ah, really? So there's a difference of usage then between Britain and America. But we do have other types, of course, the mansions, which are the old style, very, very large houses.
It's certainly different from Japanese mansion.
Yes, quite so. We have terrace houses. These are very common in the north of England. They're long rows of houses which are all joined together. And then perhaps the most common type of house of all is the semi-detached house. And a semi-detached house is one which shares one of its side walls with its neighbour. We've talked of one difference between British English and American English. I think perhaps we also could point out the difference in spelling between story, that the British story has an E, S-T-O-R-E-Y. Also, there's a difference in the naming of the floors. The first floor in America is called the ground floor in Britain, and that's a source of constant confusion here in Japan.
Exactly.
But talking about differences, we have, I think, the cellar in Britain rather than a basement. And the cellar...
Cellar. Oh, how do you spell it?
That's C-E-L-L-A-R. And we normally think of that as a rather dark, damp place. Good for storing wine, perhaps, but not very good for...
When you say for pleasure purposes or playing games, as you said, in the case of American basement.
But I think you have attics in more of your houses.
Yes, at the top of the house, the other end of the house, we have attics which we use for storing things.
How about a pantry?
Oh, yes, a pantry. That's quite common, too. Pantry's a very small room full of shelves, and it's next to the kitchen, and it's used for storing food.
Food, provisions, keeping provisions.
Right.
今日はうちということで一般的に日本のうちとそれから英米のうちが構造上あるいはその使い方いろんな面でどういうふうに違っていますかというふうなことについて話をしておりますが、大まかに言いますとアメリカの場合にはランチハウスという言葉が出てきましたがこれが屋根の勾配が非常に緩やかな平屋のことを言いますね。それから Colonial Two-Storied House あるいは、Colonial Two-Story House というふうにも言えますが、2階建ての、植民地時代の面影を残した家ということですね。それからイギリスの方では、日本語ではバンガローと言いますと何か、休暇のための簡単な山小屋のようなものを想像しますけれども実際には、バンガローですね。これは平屋建てのことをイギリスで言います。それからイギリスの北部で非常によく見られるテラスハウスというのがありますがこれは普通の山あるいはちょっとした丘のようなところに、ずっと並んで立っている家のことを言いますね。それから、うちの中のいろんな呼び名ですけれども地下室のことをアメリカではベースメントと言いますがイギリスではセラーというような言葉を使いますね。それからアメリカのベースメントはいろんな用途に広く使われますがイギリスではさほどセラーは使われません。ワインの貯蔵なんかには使われるかもしれませんがという話ですがそれと対照的にアメリカの場合にはアティクス、屋根裏部屋のことですがこれはそれほど利用されておりません。ところがイギリスでは非常にいろんなものの保存というふうな意味で使われている場合が多いということですね。それからパントリーというところがありますがこれは大体キッチンの近くにある小さな部屋といいますかコンパートメントのようなところですが、そこに食料を貯蔵する場所ですね。それをイギリスではパントリーという呼び名で使われております。Well, what about talking about some of the features of Japanese houses in contrast? And you may have noticed by now, after living in Japan for some time, Sue and Tony, there is also a great diversity of Japanese houses, and from a very, say, traditional large farmhouse with a thatched roof to an ultra-modern Western-style house, or even a reasonable combination of a Western and a Japanese style. So it can be misleading to make a sweeping statement that a Japanese house is like this or like that. And by and large, just as our mode of life has been modernized in recent years, the structure of houses and the way people use them are also changing drastically. And as a result of it, I would assume that the strange coinage of new expressions come up, like, say, 2LDK or some LDK. We use half Japanese and half initial of the words, technically, which are called acronyms. And I wonder if it's proper English.
No, it's proper in Japanese, of course, but no American or Englishman I would understand, I don't think, unless it were explained. Our way of describing the size of a house is to count the number of bedrooms. So you could say you had a one-bedroom apartment or a two-bedroom house or even four-bedroom house, and it's assumed that at least a small kitchen and living room are included, unless it's specified otherwise. Now, if you had a very, very small apartment that had only one room for everything, bedroom, living, dining, everything all in one room, that would be a studio apartment.
Studio apartment.
Is it the same in England?
Yes, just the same, except that there we substitute the word flat for apartment, so we call them studio flats, or sometimes bed sits or bed sitters.
What is it?
Bed
sitter?
Yes, explaining a very small room, very popular with students, by the way. But in such places, it's often convenient, because of lack of space, to have the kind of bed which either folds out from the wall or converts from a settee or a sofa into a bed. But I think here we have one of the advantages of a Japanese house with tatami rooms in it, because a Japanese tatami room can accommodate a lot more people than a Western room equipped with its bed, which consumes an awful lot of space, really.
As long as there is enough ton.
Right, yes.
That's right. それで、日本の場合にいろんな家屋の形式があるわけですけれども、最近ではその 2LDK とか 3LDK というこういう言葉が出てきておりますが、これは英語では意味をなしません。それから、非常に、簡易なアパートといいますか、一つのその部屋の中に全てのものが、お台所もそれから、寝室も全てのものがこう組み入れられているような、そういうアパートのことをアメリカではスタジオアパートメントと言っております。それからイギリスではスタジオフラットという言葉が使われますし、それからもう一つの言葉でベッドシッターというような表現がありますが、これはやはり一つの部屋の中にベッドがあり、そして、キッチンもあって、その一つの部屋の中で一応生活ができるというふうに作られたもののことを言うわけですね。Well, time flies, doesn't it? And we don't have much time left, so shall we have a quick look at, say, some other expressions relating houses? And we already mentioned a bed-sitter or a bed-sitting room, is that right? Is it also possible to say in reference to a bed-sitter?
I think that's where it comes from, but we generally use the shortened version.
I see. And what about saying a condominium? I think it's very common in Japan too. And what does it mean?
It's an apartment that you buy instead of rent.
And a self-contained flat? What does it mean?
That's a flat which contains everything that you need for everyday life within the one set of rooms. So you don't have to share bathroom or kitchen facilities with your neighbors.
But it's much larger than, say, a bed-sitter or a studio apartment, because it's made up of more rooms.
Right.
それからコンドミニアムという言葉が出てきましたが、これはいわゆる分譲のアパートのことを言いますね。Well, I'm sorry, but that's all the time we have today, and everybody, we certainly hope you enjoyed being with us. Goodbye until next time.
Bye, everybody.
Cheerio.
担当は東後勝明先生。お相手はスー・ワンウィグさんとアントニー・ニューエルさんでした。英語会話を終わります。